All right, awesome. Well, thank you for everyone who's here. Welcome. We decided we got a bunch of curmudgeons up here, so we decided we were going to take some of your submissions and questions and draw them from a bag at random. We have appropriate themed attire, clearly. So this panel is specifically going to be largely unmoderated. The only moderation for this panel will be timing, and this was by design. We wanted to have attendees be able to add whatever questions you wanted to ask these lovely folks up here and have them comment on in an unredacted fashion.
This was such a bad choice.
We have our lovely JawnCon paper bag for this too.
I'm still hung up when he said it's random, because there's no such thing.
There is no such thing.
He's going to argue with your random number generator.
So
you have a proper RNG?
We have a proper
chocolate
RNG.
at the end of this tunnel?
There will be chocolate at the end of this talk. Panelists, sorry, I do not have enough to share with everyone. I know I violated the #1 university rule, right? I brought snacks for class and not for everyone.
No such thing as random. The next thing you're going to tell me that Santa Claus isn't real.
See, they're going to automate me out of a job at this rate.
Santa Claus is real for some variants of real. And in the multiverse, there has to be some variant of
You should get control of this.
So I've officially started the timer at this point so that we can start trying to actually add some rigor. So I'm going to go around and have everyone introduce themselves very briefly. Please try to keep it to one sentence. I know that's hard for this group of individuals. So my name's Christian, GuardianCosmos. If you haven't met me before, I run an independent security firm called Indelible Security. We've got the lovely Bruce Potter with Turngate. We've got Josh. You're going to say it because I'm going to fuck it up.
Chief Strategy. Yeah.
Yes, he does.
My sentence?
Say your sentence.
I'm Bruce.
Now you know why I didn't ask for a sentence.
I'm
Today he's
Josh,
Louise.
Chief Strategy Officer of Cyteris.
We have the lovely Jeff Mann from Security Weekly. Jeff.
Hi, my name is Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
I am sensing a pattern. And then we have Matt from Redacted.
Hi, my name's Matt. I guess that's what we're doing now.
Yeah.
That was 2 sentences.
Mine was a movie quote.
This is true and fun. So without further ado, let's actually pick a topic to talk about.
Randomly.
Must honor.
We'll add in a little bit of extra pseudo randomness, and we'll go and we'll make each
Honor
of you pick
Russ.
your topic.
There's not enough entropy in this. There's like 18 things happening in this bag. There you go.
All right.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Clearly, he saw the topic already.
No.
No, it's better than crypto. So the first one is going to be everyone's favorite hot button item. AI. Specifically, what are AI's current impacts on staffing and what are your opinions on it? I am going to try to keep them to 3 minutes, so we'll see how well that goes.
Oh, God.
Are we going in a line?
We're going to go in a line.
Oh, for God's sake. So,
Are you regretting your season choices yet?
first of all, just to be clear, like AI is not a new thing, right? Like we've been doing AI. We're in the third wave of AI. We did like weird symbolic computing shit in the 60s when we knew computers weren't very fast and we tried really hard to make them think like humans. And then we said, fuck that. And then later on, we came back in the 80s and 90s, and computers were getting faster. And we're like, we can just lean on speed and make computers think. And we almost got there. And then like Big Blue beat Kasparov, ooh, AI. And then it all kind of went to sleep again. And then suddenly we made a goddamn website that you could talk to and make pretty pictures, and the third wave of AI is here, and everyone thinks it's going to revolutionize the world. But we've been doing ML, we've been doing AI things for a long time. I think the only real change is that it's actually approachable and usable by people to do generative things, to do analysis and that kind of stuff. The reality is, for a lot of the work that we do, it's too non-specific. It just makes stuff up. It's trying to appease you. It doesn't actually reason. It's just asking fancy questions to a fancy box, right? And there are certainly things that will help provide velocity to the things we do every day in cybersecurity, provide some analytical capabilities, things like that. But it is a long way away from disrupting anything in the workforce.
Awesome.
I have basically one statement and then a screaming match. AI is not magic. Every executive that says, just put AI in, it'll just do the job, right? No. What are the triggers? What are the thresholds? What are the directions? What are the flows of what you want it to do? Wait, AI can't just figure that out? No. Okay? Is AI interesting? Absolutely. I've been working with AI personally since 2005. And honestly, since before that, but that was when I first professionally worked with it in video surveillance in New York City. Okay, it was really cool. And it was really neat, and it sucked so bad. But it's come a long way. But seriously, AI is not magic. You have to give it a framework to work off of. You have to give it, what do you want it to do with the data? It doesn't like, oh, that's data. You can say something simple. Hey, tell me what's anomalous about this data. And in some instances that works. But in a lot of instances, you have to tell it, if this happens, I want you to do this. Now, if that sounds like if this, then that, or Zapier, you're right, okay? AI at its current incarnation, and Bruce is 100% right, it's been around for 50 years, basically, in various incarnations, various lifestyles, all right? Not that it's an alternative lifestyle, I just want to be clear on that. But AI has been literally done so much that we have to give it, we have to treat it with respect, but we have to understand that that includes teaching it what to do when we want it to do something. It's not just magic. To be clear, what I tell people is it's not FM, which is not just magic, it's a specific kind of magic.
I'm surprised. We're actually doing really good on keeping this to 3 minutes. This is a pleasant surprise here. We've got a lot of content in there. Quick show of hands before we move on to Jeff's opinion on this one. How many of you have actually used an AI chatbot at work legitimately and gotten decent values out of it?
That's a different question.
Well, how many of you have done so in a technical role? Show of hands. How many have done so in a non-technical role? Okay, so we got a nice 50-50 split here.
How many of you thought that if I asked it to write me a phishing email, that was both technical and non-technical?
Excuse me, sir. I think that's a swear jar for talking out of turn.
Oh.
Jeff?
That's going to be the rule, huh? Like,
So
fuck that.
The subtopic was the
Specific to staffing.
specific to staffing. How many of you people that raised their hand saying you're using it in a technical role? Raise your hand if you're worried that you're going to lose your job anytime soon. Because of AI. I mean, there could be other factors.
Let's add that predicate. Losing your job.
I'm always
because of
worried I'm losing my job. That's another story. I was at a vendor invite-only dinner in D.C. That's District of Columbia, Washington, the other night, and the focus was on AI. I have a personal life commitment of never touching AI, which is getting harder and harder because all the apps on my phone now have AI this and AI that. But this company was trying to not do a sale. You know, it wasn't a marketing pitch, but they wanted all these smart people in the room and me to talk about their product that they were getting ready to put on the market and how they could be using it more for defense and defensive strategies. And the message that I got from it was our industry doesn't do a good job of defending against nation state APT. So we really focus on going after the script kiddies and the incidental, casual bad guys just tripping upon your vulnerable site and then doing something bad. And so the big concern is now that capability is going to be put into a lot more hands. So we're going to get really, really that much better at protecting the things that we really shouldn't worry about, and the things that we do worry about, we're still not good at doing. So that's my thoughts on AI is, it's like that old song about war. What is it good for anyway? Absolutely nothing.
I would agree with that. Matt, I know you and I have had this conversation extensively before, so please be very spicy with your answer, as I know you can.
Well, I mean, like, for a couple of things, I want to kind of narrow the scope of the question, because AI is an incredibly broad technical field and can mean a lot of things. I think, like, given the recency of the comment in the current cultural context, we're really talking about large language models and their use therein.
But the card said AI.
Yes, but I mean, like, come on, we have to have definition.
But I think
we don't have form. Without form, we don't have
all of us on the
formality.
stage can agree that AI is a terrible term
Yeah.
that does not adequately represent what the technology actually does.
I think, like, part of the issue right now is that there is this giant, like, ephemeral level of FOMO in product teams and in businesses and among the board of directors, that if they aren't jumping on the LLM wave, that their company is going to miss out and kind of collapse into a certain degree of irrelevancy. So you have this kind of upward pressure from product teams and a lot of executives in the technology space trying to add LLMs onto every functionality. And it is really kind of a answer in search of a problem, but that doesn't mean that the business pressures aren't there and aren't also changing staffing levels.
I
What
apologize.
Hold on, we're going to give everyone time. We'll do one round at the end, I promise.
I was told we weren't going to be fact checked.
I thought about making
I
that
have the
joke.
concepts of a plan.
I think like one thing that you're ending up seeing as a lot of companies are chasing after this like ambrosia of LLM features and functionalities is that they are kind of tending to restructure product teams. So there have been like almost these static revenue coming in from business and product lines where staffing levels are pegged to a certain amount of payroll that they have to spread around the entire organization. So as they've been growing AI functions, they have been having reductions in force and less investment in other areas of the business. So as it pertains to staffing, I've seen this at let's say all of the biggest tech companies happening over and over again, that these layoffs aren't really layoffs in the classical sense, but they're more of a restructuring as they're trying to feed more into the product development of LLMs. So at least in product companies, I think we have seen some pretty seismic shifts caused by the overinvestment in LLMs.
Absolutely. Josh, go ahead.
Yeah, I've got two things. Number one, do you remember during the blockchain craze, the iced tea company that added the word blockchain to their name and their stock went up 400%? And they had nothing to do with blockchain. There are aspects of AI that are roughly very similar. Second thing, one of the things I thought about recently, and backing up what you were just saying, was I was wondering if some of these companies are restructuring and laying off effectively because they do it in dribs and drabs. They don't get affected by the WARN Act. So the WARN Act is if you lay off a significant chunk of your company, there's certain things you have to do, including severance, this, that, and the other thing. But if you say, look, we're doing a reduction in force, we don't need all these people, even if you actually do, but if you do it far enough ahead of time where they think they're going to put AI in to replace these people's functions, they don't have to do all these severance packages. It doesn't cost them all that money. I don't know if that's true. It's just supposition.
I think you make a really good point about that, right? Because we've seen a lot of these companies be like, oh, we're going to automate that. We can just do that with AI. Now, I think most of the practitioners in the room here can very easily say that there are many things you can do with AI, and there are many things you can't. And again, I'm going to separately say I resent the term AI. I really do. For a lot of reasons, I don't think it's definitionally accurate. I think that...
What should we use?
I like LLMs or ML much better because that's really what we're doing, right? We're tokenizing. AI at its core is tokenization and then ultimately layering over statistics. There is no cognizant thought that's really happening right now in AI models today. They're never going to...
Oh, somebody's got a strong feeling about that.
You sure about that?
I'm good. I'll keep my mouth shut.
All right. Anyone else want to say anything else on the topic of AI staffing? You sure, Bruce?
No, I'm good. Let's pull the next card.
All right, Josh, will you do me the honor of pulling the next topic? And you can just hand it to me. Thank you.
Yes?
Just now?
Just now when we pulled it 3 seconds before you read it? How dare you?
Oh, peak with a K. I really was confused.
That would have been a much more awkward
Like, where the
conversation.
hell did that come from?
I mean, we do have Matt's proper little business gentleman in the back of the room.
The size of his ears, you'd think he could hear better.
Yeah.
So the next topic that we've drawn from this is skills gap currently. So specifically in the context of hiring and employment, what are your opinions on the current skills gap in people who are looking for a job, have a job already and are already employed, but maybe don't have the right skill set for the role that they're currently in? We're going to start on the opposite side this time. Matt?
I'm sorry, can you rephrase the question?
Absolutely. What are your thoughts on the current skills gap that we're seeing between the number of people in the job market versus the number of people that are actually being employed?
I mean, I don't necessarily think that I've got a really good idea on that, like on a large scale basis. I mean, I definitely think that there is this kind of tendency of a lot of people that are writing job recs to like be asking for the moon and then settling for what the interviews pan out on. I mean, and this is a trend that's been going on for 15 to 20 years in technology. I mean, I've seen recs come across where people are asking for more years experience in the existence of a particular technology. And then I've seen candidates apply where they were building that thing before it was released open and actually qualify for that. I mean, like, I don't know. I don't think that we necessarily have a skills gap. We have a disconnection from HR problem. Like, I think most of the job recs that are written in every industry are kind of crap. But my experience has been that candidates that I've interviewed in the last several years are really well skilled and would be really a good fit for the job if you can actually convince certain hiring managers that they can do it and forget a little bit of the process. I think what we have is a process misalignment, not a skills gap.
I think you make a really good point there, and I could say, like, as someone who hires and helps to hire a considerable amount of people across a number of companies, that's definitely something that I've seen a lot of, is this big gap between HR and the actual people who are doing the work and asking for these recs to be open. And I think that, especially, you know, going back a little bit to our previous topic, you know, as more and more tools, you're seeing more and more horror stories about candidates that are being automatically rejected for superfluous reasons by tooling that are never even making it to a human, right? Jeff?
Where do I start? My opening statement is I'm not sure that there's a skills gap in the sense that we see it advertised. I immediately have questions about what skills are we talking about? Are we limiting this to technical skills, programming skills, IT skills? Because if you go to a couple conferences like this, you'll pretty much hear at least one talk, usually every conference, about how we have a skills problem in terms of communication, trying to get our message across to, you know, the muggles and the mere mortals and the stupid users. There's variations to a theme.
Yeah, just as a PSA, a spider about the size of a, I don't know, small muffin just went underneath here. So just, I don't really know.
As long as my wife
I'll use a
doesn't
banana
see it.
for scale. I'm not really sure how to describe it, but it was big enough to be terrifying. It just went whoop. So if anyone keels over, we're going to know what happens to them. Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt, Jeff.
I mean, you got to keep the Philly in Philly, right?
Yeah.
Did that take you off track a little? Not too much. You know, in the last 18 to 24 months, there's been tons of layoffs. And all the unemployed people out there, I've known people that have been looking for jobs for over a year. They're distracted. I'm not distracted. You know, they might be questioning, where's this skills gap? Nobody's hiring me. I can't find the right position. So there's all that going on. In a larger sense, I've felt for a long time, being an old timer that grew up in this industry where we just kind of, it was being invented while we were learning it and we were figuring it out as we went along. And I worked for an organization whose business was information security. That's what we called it back then. I kind of got into it for the passion and the curiosity and the puzzle. I'm concerned, and this is maybe a little bit curmudgeon-y, but these days I meet so many young people that want to get into this business, and they're doing it because they think it's a valid career field, and I'm not seeing the passion. That's just a personal thing, but if you're not passionate about this, why are you doing it? Oh, because they've been told that this is a valid career path. I would like to think that in an organization, and my day job is a consultant and advisor. I go out to lots of organizations trying to help them guide themselves to a passable level of security using a compliance framework I won't mention right now just to spare Josh. But PCI. It's PCI. But I kind of think that the skills gap, the way I was brought up in this industry, I worked for organizations where everybody understood the need for data security, information security, and what their role was and what they should and shouldn't do. I've kind of thought for a while that the skills gap is across the organization, not just devoted to the groups that have been perceived or tagged within the organization or the ones that are responsible for security. You know, the IT department, the security team, team, the GRC team, and everybody else is just kind of bopping along, not worrying about it because they think it's somebody else's problem in the organization. I see the skills gap in the sense that everybody in the organization has forgotten or never learned, or we old-timers have never adequately taught the need and the understanding of how to do security in an organization. Because, this may or may not come as a surprise, but it's not all about the technology at its heart. It's about what do you have that's valuable that you don't want to lose, whether it's information or reputation or whatever. Yeah, technology is a large part of it, but it doesn't end with the technology. Technology is just a piece. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and I want to touch back on like two things before I know Josh is very anxious and has a lot to say about this.
He's been twitching.
Yes, it was that obvious before you asked. Did we lose our little friend? But I think that there were two really good topics that Jeff touched on as well. One of them was what specific type of role? I'll say that I think now with the accessibility of a lot of different information, it's harder to find a really good developer these days because everyone says they know JavaScript, right? It's not that hard to learn. But not everyone who says they know JavaScript is actually good at it or knows how to use JavaScript, right?
JavaScript count as a developer?
I argue whether or not JavaScript actually counts as a valid language sometimes. Despite the baby face, I still do know punch cards, and I am a little curmudgeon-y myself up here, as these lovely folks know, right?
Even though he's only 12.
It would be great if I could make it through one talk and one conference ever without someone commenting on the baby face.
I'm sorry.
You brought it up. Wait.
This is not a panel about my age.
It's the sloppy makeup. Anyway.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Next.
I will get you for that later. So the other thing that I think that Jeff brought up that's really, now that Josh completely derailed that train of thought, so I'll just give him the mic instead, because I know he's itching for it.
All right, listen, skills gap is something I actually have a bit of a passion for, and I'm going to start off by saying that it's absolute bullshit. Okay, number one, everybody, who here has heard a number like 2.6 or 3.2 million cyber jobs going begging, right? Okay, that is BS. Do you know how they came up with that number? They said there's this many companies with this many people. Per number of 50 or I forget the number, 20 or 30 or whatever it is, per people in a company, they need one dedicated cyber person. How many 50-person companies do you know about with a dedicated cyber person there? Anybody? No, try again. So that's BS. That's where the number came from, and it's B. Total S. Next. Okay, so you've got 3.2 million jobs going begging. That means they're going to pay top dollar because they're rare. If they're rare, why are they laying off 20,000 at a shot? Okay, let's be clear. Number one. Number two, some of the best people I know, CISOs and technologists of incredible quality, haven't worked for a year or years now. Okay, long bloody time. If it was so rare, why would that be? Okay, now let's go to number three. Did you know that with this 3.2 million, which again, total BS, what's happened is if you're old like me, you remember the 90s when it was go to law school, go to law school. Lawyers make lots and lots and lots of money. Hi, Alex. So Alex, I'm going to ask you a question. How many people went to law school because of the money, not because they were interested in actually doing something or practicing law or whatever back then? Was it a significant proportion? About 90%. And they come out of law school, and millions of them go into these doc review farms, which 5 minutes later got automated, okay? And not that anybody knows how to play free cell, right? And
in the 70s, it was be an engineer, be an engineer.
Be an engineer, be a lawyer, be an InfoSec person. And so what you've got is you've got these boot camps and these schools which have no idea how to actually teach InfoSec. I just finished, literally drove up from Arlington yesterday. I was at a place that I cannot name that I was teaching auditors.
But it was in Arlington.
It was in Arlington. There's a lot of businesses in Arlington.
But you can't name it.
I can't name it.
Narrows it down.
Just a little. And I was teaching their auditors how to audit cloud. Okay? These are IT auditors to a large extent, and they didn't understand. I had to go back and teach them IP addresses and ports first. Okay? And by the way, these had all taken the firewall class, and they didn't know what ports were. So the point is that these InfoSec jobs and these boot camps and these short course certificate whatevers, some of them are good, don't get me wrong. I'm not denigrating all of them, just 95% of them. Okay? This is a significant problem. We've got a flood of people coming into the industry thinking, I get out of school and I make $120K a year, right? Right? Don't you? Don't you make 100? I started this industry making, God, $9 or $10 an hour, but admittedly that was in the 80s, so I can't really say much. But look, the point is that, do you know what entry level means these days on Indeed and all the job boards? Does anybody know what entry level means? What's that? 3 to 5 years experience. Entry level means 3 to 5 years experience. They had to invent a new term, recently graduated, for the people just coming out of school. So when entry level is 3 to 5 years experience, where the hell are you supposed to get that experience? All right? This whole skills gap thing is crap. We are actually not in an oversurplus of cyber people. We are in an oversurplus of cyber people who may be qualified and may not, combined with the fact that HR is so bad that they just fired, I can't name the company, it's public though, they just fired the entire HR department of a company because the director of cybersecurity put his own resume in with the knowledge, with his own company listed as director of cybersecurity, and he got rejected for a cybersecurity job.
In minutes, actually. It was in real time.
So he went blazingly incandescent to the board and went, I want HR gone. Leo, we love you, shut up. Anyway, so the point is that you've got HR processes that are bad. My wife got her boss hired. A friend of ours, she got hired as her boss, which she's very happy about. But the point is she had to restart his application 3 times because the HR process was broken that badly. Okay? Our neighbor, weirdly enough, is an HR director for a small medical company. She was an HR director for massively large companies and startups, and she left them because she's like, all of their processes are broken. So you've got broken HR processes across the board. You've got a cyber skills gap that is incentivizing people wrongly into going into a field that they have no passion for, well said, Jeff, thank you, that they have no idea of what they're getting into. They have no actual experience in the underpinnings, the foundational elements. They just get told, here's how you pen test, because they all want to be pen testers, because it's sexy, okay? And they go, why can't I get a job? And along with them, because there's so many of them, we've got people that are legitimate, that are passionate, that are experienced, that are wonderful, and they can't get a job either. So, sorry, damn it. Look, it's bad. It's really bad. And so my one advice is if you are looking for work, work your network much harder than you work your applications.
Absolutely. So with that in mind, how many people here would consider themselves a member of the Hack Harder generation? How many people know what the Hack Harder generation is? Okay. So I have a group of people up here who I would consider all to be part of the Hack Harder generation. And as I grew up on that as a child on the internet, stop laughing.
10 years ago.
Every time. You know, I remember when I was first trying to learn, thank you. Little bit short there.
Almost got it.
But I remember, you know, when I first started, this was still in the earlier days, right?
Sorry,
there wasn't a
I
lot
wasn't
of
aiming for your
resources.
face.
There wasn't a lot of resources education, and it used to be you wrote your own tool or you didn't do it. Like I grew up learning that if you wanted to be a pen tester, you learned to pen test with Netcat or less. If you can't do a pen test with Netcat or less, you should not be pen testing. And while I don't believe that's the right methodology, I think tools
Really
are
is
good.
young, isn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, remember, Jeff did it by actually moving the inodes with magnets.
But, you know, my point there is, right, we have all these resources available now that we didn't have before. There really isn't a reason for a skills gap to exist. It really is that HR gap. We have a community, we have events like this. You know, Russ has done a really great job with this event of making all of this retro tech available. How many of you have played with some of Russ's internal network here?
That's a personal question.
I mean, it is Russ.
This is true.
Of the people who just raised your hand, how many of you have ever used any of the tech that you played with prior to JawnCon? So that's a smaller portion of you, right? And if you look in the room, that's very skewed in one direction, right?
We're old is what he's meaning.
Hey, at least I was tactful about it.
Yes, you weren't sloppy at all.
You're gonna work that in every time, aren't you? And I'm fine with this. You can blame Bruce for the sloppy references, by the way.
Thank you. I'm going to disagree with almost everything that was said. So First of all, with all respect to Mr. Mann, who I respect a lot, I've come to believe that passion for your job is a danger to yourself and not necessarily something that should be rewarded. If your job does not give you the ability to learn what you need to continue to be employed to do your job, it's the wrong fucking job. You shouldn't have to come here and do this just to stay ahead of things. So passion's important, and I think you and I and you all
Josh.
yeah, sorry. Grew up at a time where there was no structured learning, and so we just had to gut it out and do weird shit in our home lab and whatever, because there was literally no other way to do it. There's lots of ways to do it now, right? I think that there's structural issues of how companies work, there's structural issues in the industry, and there's a whole bunch of things that work against people that are otherwise useful in the environment and know the skills and know all the things, but they can't get a job. As an example, we build tools that are awful to use, right? We have cybersecurity graduates who know malware, they know defense, they know firewalls, they know all these kind of things, and then you hand them like, here's Falcon, go administer this, right? Can I get training? Why do you need training? You're a graduate, you know this stuff. Well, because there's a lot of shit here, right? Like you open up Falcon, like I have a talk I did last week at Mission Control down in Arlington, and I went through security tools, and if you really diagnose them, they're awful to use. They pay no attention to the actual administrators and people doing it. In my last job, I was a CISO, but somehow I ended up administering S1 one day. I disabled all USB ports in the entire network. Whoops, for about 15 seconds, undid it. It was like, sorry, we got a few help desk requests. Like, my computer got really weird for a bit. I'm like, I bet it did. Like, I'm fairly confident, but all I was trying to do was one little change to our USB policy, and I obliterated USB, the whole, it was great. Anyway.
We've all been there.
Yeah. Absolutely have all failed at administering at some point. But the problem is we develop these security controls that are hard to use, and then we ask people to use them, and then we wonder why we can only find 4 left-handed blue-eyed people that know this weird part of Nessus and this other tool and all this other horse shit. So as a real-world example, something because I'm old and I live in suburbia that I pay attention to are sidewalks, right? Like the number of like suburban places like here in Philadelphia with all these kids and people walking and whatever, where there's not a goddamn sidewalk in sight. A sidewalk is a security control, right? How do you use a sidewalk correctly? You fucking walk on it, right? Like that's the extent of knowledge that you have to, your responsibility is to continue to walk, right? How do you use a road correctly as a pedestrian? Well, it depends if there's a shoulder. It depends on how fast it is. Is it a 4-lane? Is it divided? You know, oh my God, you walk facing traffic, except when there's no shoulder, maybe you're on the other side of the road. People have to like navigate security controls like that every day, and it gets more and more complicated to stay alive. The analog in the tools that we've built is we haven't built sidewalks for people to use to implement controls. We built 4-lane divided highways and no shoulder and said, go for a walk. And then we wonder why we can't hire people.
User
Can
experience?
I push back real quick?
User
On the
experience?
pushback?
What's wrong with you, man? Call yourself a security professional.
Oh no, we're starting the holy wars up here.
I just wanted to say one thing.
And I'm
Pushing back to your pushing back.
Yeah.
So yes, there is structured learning now. We could, if there's a paper in the box, certification, education, training.
Licensure.
I still think, we're talking about all these people not making it through the pile with resumes and stuff, and they have endless certs, they have the degrees, they've got the training certificates. What cuts people apart? To me, it's still the passion.
I think it's the ability to learn, which I think passion is part of, or it's part of passion, but I mean, I think you don't.
Passion, interest, come up with a different name for it, but
Yeah,
there's got to be something that sets.
You have to care, right? You have to care about your job.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the end of the day,
Right,
like
caring.
it's a
You have to
job. You
care.
have to care about it. But like I've got like a person that works for us. He runs our infrastructure team. He builds all our infrastructure. We're all cloud native, whatever. That dude has. He lives in the middle of nowhere in Vermont, and he goes to a co-working facility every day at 9, and he works until 5. And that's his job. And like, if something goes wrong, well, we don't have customers, so right now nothing goes wrong. But when something goes wrong, like he'll get paged and he'll get to deal with it. But the idea is that's an exception, not a rule. But that's his thing. That guy has built like an incredible piece of infrastructure for us. It's great. It works like we want. But and he is very clear though, like I care a lot about my job. And then the whistle blows. And I care about my family. And I appreciate that.
That's how you stay
important.
interested. That's how you stay caring.
Sure.
Because you have work-life balance.
Yeah, but
In contrast, since this is a rant session, I go to a lot of conferences. I have a lot of young people come up to me and they say, I want to be a pen tester. Can you give me advice? And
don't be one.
every part of
That's
there's
literally what I
that.
tell them.
But every fiber in my body wants to say, if you have to ask, maybe this is not the job.
No, I disagree with you. If they want to get advice from somebody who's been there, then asking is what you need to do. I just don't think that right now pen tester is a good job field. The salaries for pen testers, you can disagree with me, but the salaries for pen testers are going down.
It's getting commoditized.
I want to say, at least in terms of that, like, we are the wrong audience to ask that question to. How do you learn? How do you get into this? All of us on the stage woke up one morning after reading too many man pages and said, I fucked up, and this is where my career is right now. So, like, if you're asking somebody about
That's
how to
surprisingly
actually,
true.
like, get into it, how to go from, like, I want to do this thing, how do you learn it? None of us know.
If any of the people on the stage are not mentally asking themselves, how the hell did I end up on this stage talking about this right now? I've not done a good job putting this panel together.
I mean, but so, like, you know, I think it begs a really interesting question of how do people actually break into this? I mean, like, ask somebody who has in recent time. Like, you want to know about how somebody, like, got into a pen testing job? Ask someone who just got hired into a pen testing job out of college. The world has changed. Where we grew up, where we learned how we interacted with technology, how we got into this career path is so obsolete. I mean, you can go upstairs and play with these old Apple IIs or some of these old Sun boxes, and you know what? That's fun. Talk to us about how we built our career because it might be historically fun, not because it is currently repeatable in this climate.
Yeah, and I'm going to tie that back to what I said about the hack harder generation. Everyone up here is part of that generation. Everyone up here had someone tell them, here's the manual, figure it out. There was no real community or self-learning as much as we have today. And I think you'll find a lot of people now are what a lot of us might refer to as like a tool junkie. You know how to do the thing with the EDR tool and the fancy tool. Can you do it without the tool if I take your tool away? I have run so many tabletops where we've had them go, oh, well, we'll just do this auto remediation in our insert tool name here of your vendor of choice, right? And I'll ask them, okay, well, what happens if the tool is compromised? What happens if you don't have the tool? What happens if you have to go to someone who's on an air-gapped network where you can't have that cloud service? What do you do?
Stuxnet.
But I also want to point out to something. Some of these tools are intentionally built to suck as a means of gatekeeping. And words matter. We want to always have this, like, we talk about things in terms of these skills gaps, and this person is technical, that person isn't technical. What does that mean? Precisely. We need to be more technical about what it means to be technical.
We need to be more pedantic.
We basically use this word as a put down or an exclusion or an out grouping or an in grouping, or like, I want to work with this person so they're technical enough for this job, or I don't want to work with this person so they're not technical enough for this job. But, like, really, what are we talking about? Navigating a UI? For, like, one version of software that's going to be used this week and not the next? Is that a metric of which we are to measure someone's skills? I think the industry at large has failed in actually acknowledging what skills are, defining them, and providing a roadmap to learn them to people.
Wait, you mean we should define our terminology?
Wait, you mean that we should actually support our own teams?
We should have, like, standardization and consistency across our industry? Heretic.
Stop reducing the number of candidates in a job pool by being shitty to other people. Just stop being shitty.
I have 2 points of order. One, there's like 15 minutes left, and you might want to consider pulling. Not that I want to tell you how to do your job. Also, I just want to say that if I search for, quote, hack harder generation, unquote, there are literally 0 hits on the internet for that phrase, as if you're using it as a term of art that everyone knows. So you have a real SEO opportunity here to become known as the hack harder generation person. So I just wanted to let you know.
So I actually first heard that term from a bunch of curmudgeons at DEF CON, so I can't even take credit for it.
Apparently it's all on the dark web or something because Google doesn't know about it. So
said forbidden words.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so to your point though, I do want to try to get us off to the next topic here. Really, Josh, you're going to leave that one?
Is it really? Oh, I had no idea. Oh.
Ooh, we have a long one. Oh, this is a good one. and we're going to have to keep these. This has got potential to eat up the rest of our time here. Share a story for when you used very old knowledge from 30 or 40 years or more ago to solve a modern problem.
They were 10.
Kermit.
Like
You use
30,
Kermit
40
all the time
30
to
to
load
40 years
firmware.
You can blame
on the
Russ, because I
microcontrollers.
can tell you this is definitely a Russ question. Bruce, do you want to start? So I'm gonna amend the question. Instead of 30 to 40 years, let's go with name a time that you've used a older technology to solve a modern problem.
So I will say that I appreciate the reframing, because I was going back to high school and none of my stories from high school are appropriate for this audience.
I've heard some of these stories. I can attest to that.
Yeah, I grew up apparently on a movie set, and we did some bad things that other people never did. But
Remember, we are on a
one skill
university
that
campus.
has actually served me very well over the years is to be able to manipulate data on the command line. Sed, grep, awk, all that kind of stuff. The number of times that somebody hands me some weird file and then they're like, I'm going to load this into Excel and then I'm going to do a bunch of shit. And like 3 hours later, they have some results and I'll like barf out a one-liner that's like, here's all the statistical analysis of all the stuff in this file. And they're like, how'd you do that? Like, I'm old and I've hurt myself a lot. Like, this is how you end up, but I learned my first real PC was running Linux Slackware in 1993. And some of you have heard this story, but it was a mistake. I didn't realize I was installing Slackware and reformatting the hard drive of this brand new laptop that I got, and I ended up putting Slackware on the box, and then I realized that I was in a lot of trouble, and I had to learn how to use Unix. Yes, Linux, not Unix, it's fine. And so it was 1993, it was Fairbanks, Alaska. I took a cab to a bookstore, two things that existed at the time, and I bought the Unix Sys5 Release 4 handbook, and command reference, excuse me, and I read it cover to cover, which is functionally equivalent to trying to be a chef by reading an alphabetical listing of ingredients and trying to understand how often you use one ingredient versus the other. So I use like groff and trough a lot because I decided to write my own man pages. It turns out no mortal had done that since 1976, but whatever. That actually that helped me later in my career dramatically to have been hamstrung by that insanity.
You bought the wrong book, by the way.
Oh, should I have bought the BSD reference
Should have
instead?
bought Spaff's book.
Well, I don't even know that it existed in '93. Like,
Came out in the 80s.
did it really?
Yes.
Oh shit! It was Fairbanks. To be clear, again,
It was Fairbanks.
30-year-old bookstore shelf, stop it.
We're arguing about a book that is older than probably some of the
Anyway,
people in this
Grep
room.
said knock
The
for
fact
life.
they had a book about
It was an
Unix
O'Reilly
in
book before they
Fairbanks,
used
Alaska.
animals.
There's the chaos we all came for. But I will say that, that exact example is what I mean when I say that there is definitely, a tooling problem sometimes where you know how to use a tool, but you don't know how to do the thing the tool is doing for you, right? And I can tell you, I've walked into customers and it doesn't matter what EDR is there. I know how to do incident response without an EDR, and I know what the EDR is going to automate, right? So it doesn't matter what tool it is. It's about figuring out their new clunky, bad UI to do the thing that I've been doing for years, right?
God, I have a couple, but they're mostly inappropriate. I'm
sensing a theme
It's probably bad to talk about explosives in an open forum
on a college campus.
on a college campus. But so let's talk about the time that I taught the FBI how to do their job. I'm an ex-cop. And I learned chain of custody and evidence collection and proper forensics and things like that. And then I taught myself digital forensics, went out and did it professionally, and that was one of the first stages of my professional career in security. And so I had to do digital forensics on a case in Turkey. And so this is something I say, I love it. On my bucket list, piss off world leader is checked off. But I had to do a case in Turkey, and so I did it, and I did the right thing. We won the case, which is great. I mean, as an expert witness, I don't care if they win or lose, but you really do care a little bit. And so the FBI called me because it involves a foreign country, and they wanted to know what was going on. And I said, didn't you do the research? Because I did when I took the case. I researched everything about the case and everything adjacent to it. Like, what do you mean? I'm like, the guys that he's going after are in Saylorsburg, Pennsylvania. And this was a supervisory special agent and a special agent in charge and a special agent all on the phone with me. And all I hear is, thank you, click. They literally hadn't done their research. This was the Philadelphia FBI field office. So it's like, when you take a forensics case, learn everything there is to know about the forensics case and everything around it, because you never know what's going to be valuable.
Absolutely. Jeff?
This is such a trick question for me because I'm not technical. I don't do technical stuff anymore.
40 years ago was the only one that you
I
could
was a
do, though.
cryptographer. In recent times, in the last couple months, this year, I've created a cipher message that was etched onto a bourbon bottle that was sold at the gift shop at the National Security Agency, and the algorithm was based on a cipher wheel that I invented back in the 80s. Quick plug there. And also recently I was at an escape, what? Well, I get to interpret, don't I?
Yeah. Jeff's the storyteller. He gets to.
I came up with the thing.
Artistic license.
And I used it recently. I think I did it right. Kinda. I mean, it's a stretch. There was this time I had this abacus, and I used it recently instead of my calculator to balance my checkbook, okay? Go ahead, Matt.
Perfect.
Slide rule, slide rule.
I never learned the slide rule. That was my dad and my brother. Go.
I mean, I'm trying to think of something that's amusing, but most of the time that I'm using really old tech is kind of boring situations. But like every time I'm working with a microcontroller, for example, you're using X modem or Kermit or some of these like really ancient like serialized file transfer protocols, old character encoding styles sometimes. But you're always going down to really low-level bare things that don't change very often. So I would say I use 30, 40-year-old tech like pretty often, unfortunately.
I actually know somebody with a story about that, though. HD, you use 30-year-old real-time operating systems to hack Mars. So he actually used VTX, VX?
On 1 second, because I want to make sure that there's people watching on the stream.
Speaker, so there's feedback.
Guest speaker.
Sorry. Yeah, we're doing some work on VxWorks, and we figured out that they had a really weak password hashing mechanism, so we wanted to prove the point that we could brute force a login to the Opportunity rover. And so we tested it all out, but we had to go get a processor with the same specs and all that. So instead of the rad-harded version, we got like a Tadpole VxWorks tablet that had the exact same OS that was that. So setting that up, testing against it, but effectively that was our test for it. But the coolest part of all this thing is after the VxWorks talk, I got invited to go to JPL and see the real one. That was cool.
Thank you.
Who here has used Metasploit? Say thank you.
Say thank you to this nice person over here. He's the reason that you have that tool. All right, we've got about 10 minutes left. So let's see if we can make it through one topic, lightning round.
Lightning round. Also, the guy in the back held up his hands and said 5. So I just wanted to be clear. Like, it's a squishy 10
round.
I was to say, Jeff, you're up next, right? Oh, you're at 3?
Pick again, because
Oh, shit. It'll be awkward when you sit up here for the next hour then.
Somebody was
All right.
assaulting.
We have another good one that I think we're going to have very interesting takes on. What are your opinions on breach and attack simulation tools and security theater? That was one statement.
Him.
Bruce?
I'm gonna go last.
I think this is a wise decision.
Yeah.
So let's reverse the order here then.
Thank you.
Matt?
I have no experience with such things.
All right. Jeff?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. The question was, what is your thoughts on breach and attack simulation tools and security theater, and are breach and attack simulation tools security theater? I'm adding additional restating there for clarity.
Yeah, I'll skip.
Yeah.
It'll be more
Josh?
entertaining there at the
Well,
end.
this is not maybe the worst thing, because I know the last two of you are going to have a lot to say.
I think that there's a lot of security theater in security. I think there's a lot of security theater outside of security aimed at security. I think that if you go to the TSA, there's a lot of security theater out there. Breach and attack simulation, if done properly, can be useful. However, let me be very clear, and I'm going to bring in another tool, which is automated pen tests, which are not automated pen tests, they are automated exploitability scanners. And as that, they're wonderful because they can actually be used to give you, just like vulnerability scanning. How many of you do vuln scans on your infrastructure on a periodic basis, once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month, whatever, right? Okay.
Good, we like you.
Are they useful? Yes, of course they are. Are they perfect? No, of course not. But they're an indicator. They're a clue. They're something more than nothing, at least. And an exploitability scanner adds another layer onto that. Again, are they perfect?
Isn't that where security starts, is with a vulnerability scanner?
No. They add more to it, but they are not the be-all and end-all. I'm going to leave it there because I want to see what this man has to say.
So first of all, I think that like incident response tabletop and exercising the processes associated with how you go about responding to crisis is important, right? The last thing you want to do is be like figuring out what your IR process is when the incident happens. As an analog, I like analogs. I'm going to go hiking with my son in Philmont, high adventure thing for anybody that knows scouts up in New Mexico. And one of the things you have to do is filter your water, and you have to do it repeatedly. You have to do it about a day in advance because of all the weird shit that you have to do to it. If the first time that you have to filter your water is the time that you're encountered with it and it's a life or death situation, you're going to do it wrong. So you might as well sit at home and filter the stuff that comes out of your sink and just get used to the process so it's automatic so you're familiar with it. It's the same with IR. Like, your life will depend on it, basically, when it happens. Breach simulation, attack simulation, in my mind, is a step too far for a lot of organizations because they're not sophisticated enough to consume the output. What it is striking to me, and this is something that I think is endemic in our industry, is so many organizations solve the same problems all the time, right? Like, you are all suffering the same pains. Very few organizations are special snowflakes. If you're a special snowflake organization, you kind of know it. You have specific controls and processes in place. Everybody else does the same thing. I expect my vendors and the products I use and the technologies that I use to be thinking of those kind of problems and dealing with attack and breach simulation for me, so I don't have to do it because it's weird, bespoke knowledge that it's hard to operationalize, but it's something that can be productized and put in place to make better controls, better detections, better defenses. So I think there's utility to it, but only at the upper, 5% of the industry.
Wow, you guys got the tame version of that. There's a spicier one.
I'm trying to be polite.
So as we're coming up on time here, I want to close out this topic. If no one else has any other inputs on it, and I'm gonna imply that you will not have a further input on it for the sake of time here. But I want to say a big thank you to JawnCon and Russ for having us. A big thank you to our panelists. Please do feel free. I'm going to throw them to the wolves. Please do feel free to find any of us if you'd like to continue the conversation on any of the topics. If you've submitted a topic and we didn't get to it, I'm sorry, we ran out of time. We're all rather talkative people, as I think you've learned if you didn't already know that about us. However, I do plan to run further iterations of this panel in the future. So please definitely think about your topics that you'd like to see industry experts talk about for the next con, as we will definitely be doing this again. All right, and thank you guys so much for being a great audience. And stay tuned, because I believe one of our panelists has a talk coming up.